Hi, and welcome to Terry Talks Movies. This time around, we're going back to 2015 again to take a look at the movies I watched in 2015. And there are 400 of them, so I'm not going to make you sit through all of them. I'm going to pick out the ones that I really liked and the ones that I suggest you watch now. We've got up to number 65 in the previous one I did of this. So I'm going to share my computer screen now, and we're going to go further into the wonderful year of 2015. Before Trump was president, before COVID hit, before all of the things that plague us now, except global warming, were not a thing. So just let me hit these keys, because here we go. There we are. And there is the screen. So we actually finished on Real Genius. Great movie, Val Kilmer. Gotta love that. Now, let's have a look here. We Still Kill the Old Way, which is a 2014 gangster movie set in London, with a whole bunch of old actors in it. Ian Ogilvy's in there. Alison Doody, who was in the third Indiana Jones movie. Stephen Burkhoff's in there. Lots of other people. There's actually a sequel to this called We Still Die the Old Way. Kind of like a geezer gangster movie set in London, which is kind of fun. If you can find a copy of it, you're going to be okay. Then I watched two movies. I watched Ninotchka with Greta Garbo, directed by the wonderful Ursula Lubitsch. Melvin Douglas is in there, Ina Claire, Bela Lugosi, Sig Ruman. And then I watched the musical remake of it, Silk Stockings, with Fred Astaire and Sid Charisse, directed by Ruben Mamoulian. Who else is in there? Janice Page, Peter Lorre, Jules Munchin. Both, I recommend them both. They're both interesting about an early attempt at détente, let's say. Then here's a deep cut English crime movie you should check out, Never Let Go, which stars Richard Todd and Peter Sellers playing a criminal called Lionel Meadows. And Peter Sellers in this is gangbusters good in a dramatic role in 1960, directed by John Gilman. This movie is a killer film. Richard Todd, less good, but Peter Sellers playing a criminal with a really icky personal life. Really, that one's a hidden gem. You should check that one out. Then we'll go to a more recent gangster film, Sexy Beast from 2000, with Ray Winston, Ben Kingsley, Ian McShane, Amanda Redman. If you haven't seen Sexy Beast, you should see it. Fantastic opening scene too, with Ray Winston's character laying around in his Spanish villa before the arrival of Don Logan, a mad criminal played by Ben Kingsley, in his villa, who wants to persuade Gal, played by Ray Winston, to go back to London and take care of some business. Let's see, Deep Rising. Gotta love Deep Rising if you haven't seen it. One of the great unsung monster movies from, I think it's the late 1990s, if I am not mistaken, 1998, directed by Stephen Sommers. Treat Williams, Famke Janssen, just a great movie with a fantastic CGI monster, rendered very well for the time. Let's have a look here. Leopard Man and The Seventh Victim, both of them Val Lewton joints when he was with RKO. The Leopard Man has a couple of fantastic scenes in it, directed by Jacques Tourneur. If you haven't seen this one, it is a bit of the hidden gem amongst the Val Lewton and Jacques Tourneur movies. The Leopard Man's got some really creepy bits in it. Incredibly well done. And then we got The Seventh Victim. I talked about that recently because I picked up the Criterion edition, which has both The Seventh Victim and I Walk with a Zombie in it. Directed by Mark Robinson, starring Kim Hunter, Tom Courtenay, Gene Brooks, Hugh Beaumont. This one's got a very, very dark vibe to it. It's about a bunch of Satanists who have made a vow not to kill anybody. But if people thwart them, they will encourage that person to end themselves. Really interesting film and very, very dark. There's just so many tangential characters at the edge of this film who are really interesting, as well as the main characters. If you haven't seen The Seventh Victim, you should check that one out definitely. Then, of course, they got Her, one of the early AI pictures. Latitude Zero with Joseph Cotton and Patricia Medina, directed by Yoshiro Honda. Mad little tokusatsu movie from the 1960s with an American cast. You got to see this one. It's basically a cross between Captain Nemo and a tokusatsu movie. Really, really odd, but just so much 1960s fun there. The villains are played by Cesar Romero and Patricia Medina, who was married to Joseph Cotton at the time. Richard Jekyll's in there as well. Just great fun 1960s science fiction. Then, of course, you've got Secret Agent, directed by Hitchcock, with Madeleine Carroll, John Gielgud, Peter Lorre, Robert Young. A nice pre-Second World War spy movie. I believe it's going to be on the imprint box sets of early Hitchcock films that are coming out in a couple of months. It'd be really interesting to revisit that one. The Smiling Lieutenant with Maurice Chevalier is another Ernst Lubitsch film. I was watching a lot of Lubitsch at the time. An amorous lieutenant is forced to marry a socially awkward princess, though he tries to keep his violin-playing girlfriend on the side. Yeah, it's pre-code, of course, because you wouldn't be allowed to do that in the Hays Code era. But this one's a lot of fun. And there's just some interesting and intriguing bits of Ernst Lubitsch business in The Smiling Lieutenant. Let's see, we'll go down to the Flame in the Arrow. That one's great. Burt Lancaster and Nick Cravatt. It's a swashbuckling adventure made a couple of years before The Crimson Pirate, a fantastic film that Burt Lancaster did with Nick Cravatt. Directed by Jacques Tourneur. This one, nice swashbuckling movie. Lots of athletic stuff from Burt Lancaster and Nick Cravatt. If you haven't seen The Flame in the Arrow, you should be able to find a copy of it because there's a lot of cheap editions of this film around. Let's have a look here. What else are we going to talk about? There's Soldier, which is a kind of remake of a Outer Limits episode that Harlan Ellison did. This one's directed by Paul W.S. Anderson. Kurt Russell's in it. Jason Isaacs before he got a wig. Connie Nielsen, Sean Pertwee, Gary Busey, Michael Chiklis. Basically a future soldier helps out a group of colonists who've crashed on a planet and need to survive. Not a bad film, but it is quite derivative. Let's have a look. The Final Program. I really should talk about this one again on the channel. Directed by Robert Fust. John Finch, Jenny Raniker, Sterling Hayden, Harry Andrews, Hugh Griffith. Based on the novel by Michael Moorcock. I like this movie even though it's nothing like the Jerry Cornelius novel that Michael Moorcock wrote. Great fun film, beautiful mise en scène, and yeah, I actually went 40 kilometers on a train to see this movie when it first came out in the 1970s. Let's have a look. You can't get past The Time Travelers. Directed by Ed Melchior, 1960 science fiction movie. If you saw this one as a kid, it blew your mind. And it did turn up on late night television a hell of a lot. Just a really interesting and fun movie. I've always got a fondness for this one. I've got about 2 or 3 copies of this in various box sets. The Time Travelers is one of the fun 1960s movies. Then I saw the 3 Iron Man movies and Circus of Horrors. Now, I know that friend of the channel, Richard, has recently got a copy of this on Blu-ray. One of the 2 great horror movies of the time, set in a circus. The other one stars Christopher Lee. But Circus of Horrors with Anton Diffring and Yvonne Malauer and Donald Pleasance in a small early role. Really a lot of fun. Circuses are creepy places at the best of times, but Circus of Horrors takes it to a new level. With a mad plastic surgeon hiding under an assumed name as the owner of a very, very dangerous circus. Let's go to the next page. What have we got there? Fall of the Roman Empire. Scorsese's talked about this one as being an elegiac movie. It's an Anthony Mann movie with Sophia Loren, Stephen Boyd, Alec Guinness, James Mason, Christopher Plummer, Anthony Quayle about the fall of the Roman Empire. And it's got a vibe about it, which is fantastic. Didn't make a lot of money. It was toward the end of these Roman epic kind of movies that were made in the 1950s and 1960s. But if you haven't seen The Fall of the Roman Empire, it's got a mood about it that really delivers the goods, and it's quite unlike a lot of the other Roman Empire movies of the middle of the 20th century. Let's have a look. Easy Rider, of course, love Easy Rider. I had the poster on my wall when I was a kid before I ever saw the movie. Just one of those iconic movies that sets in concrete the zeitgeist of an era. Directed by Dennis Hopper, Peter Fonda, Dennis Hopper, Jack Nicholson in a breakout role. It really is a mood piece in a lot of ways. I love the fact that I've now got it on 4K. It's an important movie from my childhood, but it's also an important movie because it does have the vibe of the 1960s and the end of the 1960s in America. That gives it an interesting feel, rewatching it in the third decade of the 21st century. Let's see, Repo Man, talked about that. Umbrella put out a release about this one 2 or 3 years ago. Fantastic. Boston Strangler with Tony Curtis. Really dark film, directed by Richard Fleischer. Good supporting cast in there too. Henry Fonda, George Kennedy, Mike Kellen, Hurd Hadfield, Jeff Corey, Sally Kellerman. About Albert DeSalvo, the Boston Strangler, Tony Curtis playing against type. This is him showing himself as a character actor. And he does a fantastic job playing DeSalvo. Not a fun flick, but definitely a good, solid drama, a fictionalized version of real events. Let's see, Mystery Road. Gotta love that. Ivan Sen's Mystery Road, with Aaron Pedersen playing Jay Swan, an indigenous copper who is investigating a murder case of a young girl found under a bridge in a remote road in the country. And it turns out that that town nearby is his hometown. He's got a lot of history in there. There's some great action scenes in this, beautifully done. There's a duel fought with long-range hunting rifles, which is fantastic in this film. Really fantastic supporting cast. Jack Thompson, Hugo Weaving, Ryan Quanten, Tony Barry, Bruce Spence, Tasma Walton. Just a fantastic Australian crime drama. Chinatown The Two Jakes, I watch them regularly together. I think they sit well together, and getting the whole story of Jake Gitters makes a much more interesting experience if you watch the two back to back. It really is something very special. A documentary about Hunter S. Thompson, Gonzo, the life and work of Dr. Hunter S. Thompson, directed by Alex Kidney. I like this one. I like pretty much anything to do with Hunter S. Thompson. It would have been so lovely to see what he would say about our contemporary age, had he lived long enough to see what's happening in America. He would have written lacerating essays about the current zeitgeist. Search for Weng. This one's Andrew Louvall's movie about an interesting little Filipino actor who was in B films in the 1960s. And he had a syndrome that made him about the size of a large doll. And they turned him into a James Bond superstar in the Philippines and internationally, because some of the movies actually hit here. And it was a passion project by Andrew Louvall to make a movie talking to the people who worked with Weng. A lot of fun. I've got the movie on disc, and I've actually got one of Weng's movies as well, which is amazing. You know, this tiny little man in a James Bond role. There's nothing like it in cinema. Let's see, The Harder They Come. Fantastic film with Jimmy Clifton, directed by Perry Hensel. It's a blaxploitation movie made in Jamaica, basically, about the music industry. Like any other guerrilla film of its time made in a marginal place, it's got a real vibe about it and a real feel for the times and the locations. It used to play on midnight matinee. It used to play midnight sessions in cinemas, and it's just a fantastic film to watch. And I really should do that again. Will Penny, the only good Charlton Heston Western, okay, directed by Tom Grice. Fantastic film. Charlton Heston, Joan Haggart, Donald Pleasance, Lee Majors, Bruce Dern, Ben Johnson, Slim Pickens. Again, it's one of those elegiac westerns, and it's got such a grounded ending to it and such an intense emotional impact. I sometimes tear up when I watch this movie, which is why I won't watch it too often. But if you haven't seen Will Penny, it is Charlton Heston shedding the bullshit and just playing a solid character role. French Can-Can, Jean Renoir's movie about the creation of can-can dancing. It's a good companion piece with the original Moulin Rouge, the one that was done by John Huston. Beautifully shot. Jean Gabon's in there, Francois Arnault. Just has a fantastic vibe about the creation of the Moulin Rouge, and the creation of Can-Can. Just a beautifully lush film and incredibly dynamic and a lot of fun. 2 Weeks in Another Town, one of my favorite movies about not quite Hollywood, with Kirk Douglas and Edward G. Robinson, Cicerus, George Hamilton, Claire Trevor, Dahlia Lavi, about an actor who's kind of washed up, but is actually given a second opportunity to make a movie with an old friend and director in Cinecittà Studios in Rome. It's almost a demi-sequel to the fantastic Bad and the Beautiful, directed by Vincente Minnelli, also starring Kirk Douglas. I like watching this one every now and then again. Just a movie about movie making that I really enjoy. Let's see, what else have we got? Blah, blah, blah. Mysterious Island, Escape from New York. We all know about them. Where will I go? $1 Billion Brain. The most successful video on this channel is about the Harry Palmer trilogy. I don't like any of the movies made with Harry Palmer as a character after this movie. And every week or so, I'll get somebody arguing that there are actually 5 or 6 Harry Palmer films. But I address that in the video. The video is done very, very well on the channel. But I love $1 Billion Brain, the mad direction of Ken Russell, the fantastic Richard Rodney Bennett score. It's just a wonderful film. Kiss Me Kate, I've talked about that on the channel enough. The Private Life of Sherlock Holmes, Billy Wilder's Sherlock Holmes movie, with Robert Stevens and Colin Blakely. Christopher Lee's in there as well, playing Mycroft Holmes. Just a really fun movie and not to be taken seriously at all. It's got to do with Loch Ness Monster, missing midgets, villainous monks, Scottish castle. It says it all there. Just such a cool rendition of the story of Sherlock Holmes. And it stays true to the given material in the original novels, but in a very, very different way. Then I watched the Ipcrest File, of course, the prequel to $1 Billion Brain. Let's have a look there. I watched Bullet to Beijing, one of the other Harry Palmer films, but screw that. Night of the Hunter, if you haven't seen that, you should. Best movie ever directed by Charles Lawton, because it was the only one. Mitchum was never better. It's indescribably good, this film. Based on David Scrubb's novel, creepiest character that Mitchum ever played, with the possible exception of the one he played in Cape Fear. Yeah, it's just lightning in a bottle magic, and I will watch that anytime someone puts it in front of me. Let's have a look here. I watched Hulot. 7% Solution. I must have been on a Sherlock Holmes thing. Directed by Herbert Ross, based on the novel by Nicholas Meyer, with Alan Arkin, Vanessa Rego, Robert Duvall, Nicole Williamson, giving us a very quirky but very human Sherlock Holmes. I love the 7% Solution. Let's have a look here. Trying to find things I haven't talked about on the channel. Mitchell with Joe Don Baker, directed by Andrew V. McLaughlin. 1970s actioner, totally over the top. Martin Balsam, John Saxon, Linda Evans. Yeah, it's just one of those drive-in style 1970s action films that you either love or you hate. Monsieur Hulot's Holiday, Jacques Tati. Love Monsieur Hulot, love all of Tati's work. Fantastic sound design. The gags are all visual gags and they are beautifully rendered and beautifully imagined. Jacques Tati, just a comedy god. It's just a beautifully wonderful and life-affirming little comedy. Let's have a look here. Killer Clowns from Outer Space talked about. Dead Heat on America Round. I watched that long before Imprint put out a Blu-ray of it. Directed by Bernard Girard, James Coburn, Camilla Sparv, Aldo Ray, Nina Wayne, Robert Webber, Todd Armstrong from Jason and the Argonauts. A great crime flick. I really like the way Dead Heat on America Round does what it does. And a twist at the end, of course, unfortunately. But yeah, it's like Harry in Your Pocket. It's one of those late 1960s or mid-1960s James Coburn movie when he was on a roll and really did some interestingly quirky films. Rebel Without a Cause. You can't knock Rebel Without a Cause. Nicholas Ray, James Dean, Natalie Wood, Sal Mineo, Jim Backus, Ann Doran. There's just such angst and passion in this movie. And there is, of course, the gay subtext with Sal Mineo's character that fits perfectly into the film. And it's actually improved the film when we look at it from a 21st century viewpoint. Really powerful film about troubled teenagers. The party, I'm not going to watch that again. Don't like brownface, and Peter Sellers doing brownface playing an Indian character. Just not my bag anymore. It's a movie that's dated itself. Then I did some Eurospy because I'm always up for some Eurospy. And we have the wonderful Ken Clark in Special Mission Lady Chaplin, which is a really groovy kind of, not James Bond, but like James Bond movie, with Daniela Bianchi playing Lady Chaplin, a spy. There's just so much cool stuff in this, and it's got a real banger of a soundtrack as well. I just love what it does and how it does it. And all of the Ken Clark spy movies of that era are really worth checking out if you get a chance to. Let's have a look here. This one's a deep cut. Two for the Road with Albert Finney and Audrey Hepburn, directed by Stanley Donen, about the history of a marriage and a relationship between Mark and Joanna, traveling to France to, basically have a holiday in some cases. But they reflect on the first decade of their marriage. It's a very grounded kind of movie for 1967. And I think it's an underrated one in both of the careers of the two stars. It really has some tough to handle confrontations in the marriage, but it ends on a really interesting grace note. Let's have a look here. I watched Jaws. I haven't watched Jaws since this for 10 years. But then I watched Maroc 7 with Gene Barry, Elsa Martinelli, Leslie Phillips, Future East, Denholm Elliott. A really great 1960s spy movie set in Morocco. Shot beautifully in Morocco. The director Jerry O'Hara does a fantastic job on this. I think it's an underrated mid-level spy movie of the age. I've got a copy of it on Blu-ray because I think Network put it out. May have been 10 years ago. But if you're diving into Euro spy movies, Maroc 7 is definitely an interesting effort. And it was actually produced by Leslie Phillips as well as him being in the movie. Really great action scenes in this one. Then I watched 4 airport movies for some reason. But I did. I watched them and I enjoyed them because they are exactly what you expect. Let's have a look. I'm trying to skip down the things. This one's interesting. Calypso Heatwave, directed by Fred F. Sears. About the Calypso music wave that hit in the 1950s. And the makers of this film thought it was going to be a fantastically big musical phenomenon, and Calypso wasn't. And there's an interesting thing. They got Joel Grey playing one of the characters and basically jiving around. And they have the Treniers in here as well. One of whom, it's a folk group, one of whom is played and was Alan Arkin, was a folk singer. We also get Maya Angelou in there as well. It's just an interesting historical artifact with some people who went on to have really great careers in this kind of musical exploitation film of 1957. Let's have a look. I'll do one more screen of things and see what I can find. The Blob and Beware the Blob. Gotta love those two. Fantastically fun films. Watch Cleopatra with Richard Burton, Elizabeth Taylor, Rex Harrison. Took years and years to make this movie and it cost a shit ton of money. They originally were going to film it in London, but the rain got to them and all sorts of other issues, and Elizabeth Taylor got ill. And Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton had a big affair and it became a cause celeb. Tons and tons of paparazzi around, all sorts of other things. The stories behind Cleopatra are much more interesting than the movie itself. Then we had the Josh Trank Fantastic Four from 2015. Don't recommend it. Maltese Falcon, of course. Tomorrowland I want to revisit on the channel. Brad Bird's Tomorrowland, because I think it's an interesting utopian movie that didn't get a lot of love. George Clooney there, Britt Robinson, Hugh Laurie, Tim McGraw. Just a really interesting attempt to make a utopian action science fiction movie in 2015. I think it's very underrated. Kansas City Confidential, directed by Phil Carlson. Really great, tough crime movie. Ex-convict says how to uncover who framed him for an car robbery. John Payne, Colin Gray, Neville Brand's in there, Lee Van Cleef, Jack Elam. Really tough film noir from the 1950s that doesn't get as much love as it should. The worst science fiction movie of the 1960s, Moon Pilot. It's a Disney thing with Tom Tryon, Brian Keith, Edmund O'Brien, and Danny Saval. About a really wussy astronaut who finds a chick from outer space, a manic pixie dream girl from outer space. Really weird film, but it's not good at all. And if you've seen it, it's not good at all. But I watched it. Zardoz, of course, we all know Zardoz. Beach Party, Frankie and Annette, love that. Always good. What else am I going to talk about? Watched two versions of the Desert Song, which were the 1943 versions, musical, based on the Sigmund Romberg operetta, with Dennis Morgan, Irene Manning, Bruce Cabot, directed by Robert Florey. And then I watched the remake of it from 1953. Which stars Catherine Grayson, Gordon McRae, Steve Cochran. Kind of like it. It's very much cultural appropriation of North African culture, but a little bit of fun. Blazing Saddles, we all know and love that. Gert and Daisy's Weekend, one of my favourite World War II movies from England, about two working class ladies, Gert and Daisy, who are sisters and who accompany a group of Cockney children who are being evacuated to a stately home in the country during the Blitz. This one's another one of those life-affirming movies. I love Gert and Daisy. I've got this one on DVD. I think someone should put a Gert and Daisy box set out. I think it'll be a fantastic thing to have and enjoy. Romeo and Juliet I've talked about. Sugar Hill I've talked about. Bone Tomahawk. Horror Western. Really tough movie with Kurt Russell in it and Richard Jenkins. There's some really incredible scenes of body horror in this film for a Western. Done on a fairly small budget, it really does deliver the goods. And if you've seen it, you know how hardcore a horror movie this one is. Let's see, what else do I want to talk about? Watched a few Fast and Furious movies at the time. Is there anything else I want to talk about on here? 7 Days in May, script by Rod Serling, directed by John Frankenheimer, about an attempted coup in America. And as we all know, the real coup happened a very different way in America, much later. Burt Lancaster, Kirk Douglas, Frederick March, Ava Gardner, Edmund O'Brien, Andrew Duggan, Martin Balsam. Worth a revisit, 7 Days in May. Really solid political thriller. Let's see what else we've got. 36 Chamber of Shaolin. I've got this in the Shaw Brothers box set. This one is a killer film. Directed by Lau Kar Lung, starring Gordon Liu. I think it's maybe the best of the Shaw Brothers kung fu movies. Golden Harvest, of course, had Bruce Lee, but 36 Chamber of Shaolin is just fantastic action. And you gotta love it for that. What else did I watch? Invitation to the Dance, directed by Gene Kelly from 1956. 3 complete different stories told through dance. Very obscure movie, this one. But watching it for the dancing, just fantastic. Invitation to the Dance. If you like Gene Kelly's movies, this is a passion project about the love of dance. And I just love that too. Oh, and I went back one too far here. Because of course I did. Let's go a bit further down. When I get on page 5, we'll just complete this. Siege of Pinchgut, talked about it. Money Movers have talked about it. Both fantastic. The Hateful Eight I saw at the Astor. In the proper aspect ratio with the proper lenses. Really interesting Western by Quentin Tarantino. Just, if you can see it in the original aspect ratio with the original projector and the lenses, it's a totally better experience than seeing it on Blu-ray or 4K. But that isn't to say it's bad on those ratios, but seeing it as it originally intended, mind-blowingly good. Then I watched Roadhouse, which is the second best movie called Roadhouse. The best one is John Negolesco's one from 1948 with Ida Lupino in it. But that's what I'm going to leave you. I'm going to leave you with those movies and just how wonderful they were and how much fun they were. How I should have watched better movies in 2015, but I didn't. So thanks a lot for watching. I know a lot of people like this format. Some people are a little hit and miss on it. but it's fun to just see what I watched in the past. And it gives me a bit of an idea of what I want to watch in the near future or rewatch. I want to watch new movies as they come out, of course, but there are always those movies that we want to see again and enjoy. And maybe we bring a different perspective to them as well. So, as I said, thanks a lot for watching. If you enjoyed the video, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Give it a thumbs up as well, or a thumbs down. It doesn't matter. I respect all opinions. You can also support the channel by becoming a channel member or by becoming a patron at patreon.com/terrytalksmovies. Next up, we've got Science Fiction Saturday, and I've got a couple of nice 1960s science fiction movies for you then. So until all that happens, watch some good movies, watch some bad movies. Go back over the movies you watched ages ago and just see whether your taste has improved at all. And I'll catch you next time.